Chair recognizes Ms. Howard to explain HB 3044.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 3044 would require public and private home and community support service agencies to specifically obtain criminal history record information from the secure section of the Department of Public Safety background check system when screening potential employees. This legislation is simply about ensuring our most vulnerable Texas residents are safe when they're cared for by home health aides. Currently, HCSSAs are required to conduct background checks when screening potential employees. However, current statute allows HCSSAs to conduct background checks using the section of the DPS background check system that is open to the public to satisfy this requirement. The public section of the system omits certain criminal history information on individuals, as it only provides information on convictions and deferred adjudications. Meanwhile, the secure portion of the system, which is only accessible to certain entities in statute, including HCSSAs, contains more criminal history information on individuals, including dismissed and pending cases and cases that haven't been heard yet in court. This offers a more complete view of an individual's criminal history. Because statute allows them, some of the HCSSAs obtain incomplete criminal history on potential home health aides by using the public section of the system. This is what happened to one of my constituents whose parents were victims of a crime committed by their home health aide. The Home and Community Support Service facility who hired this employee had received insufficient information of this individual's criminal record. Had there been a requirement for these facilities to use the secure portion of the background check system, the report would have shown this employee had pending criminal cases and could have prevented my constituents' parents from being wrongfully exploited, as the Health and Safety Code requires that persons convicted of certain crimes may not be employed in direct contact with aged and individuals with disabilities. House Bill 3044 simply requires HCSSAs to use the secure portion of the DPS background check system to ensure that no Texan will be subject to potential exploitation as a result of an incomplete background check. And the committee substitute allowed licensed home and community support service agencies who want to go above and beyond the opportunity to pursue an equivalent or enhanced background check, such as fingerprint background check or an FBI background check, when screening potential employees, as some of them already do. Home health aides take care of the most vulnerable individuals in our society: elderly people with disabilities and convalescents who must be protected from abuse and neglect, including people like my husband.
Members, you've heard the explanation of HB 3044. Is there any objection to consideration? The chair hears none. Chair lays out HB 3044. Clerk will read the bill.
HB 3044 by Howard, relating to certain...
Chair recognizes Ms. Howard. Chair recognizes Mr. Craddick to speak against the bill.
Mr. Speaker, members, this is a bill that I've looked at and that I had marked before I had to vote against, because I don't think it's clear enough in explaining where you and I are in this process. And the problem is, we're taking background checks of individuals, and those background checks are going to be used. A lot of these background checks, once they go to these institutions and places where they can be used, are sold for other purposes. It's happened many times. I'm sure you've had phone calls and other things about this that have been done through the state. I don't think this bill has been vetted enough in that area and is covered enough in this area to make sure that these lists won't be used and be sold like they are in other different areas and other institutions in the state. And I don't know about you, but in my district, we get a lot of phone calls that we get that are just there, and people are using lists that they've picked up. And so I think this is something that needs to either be studied by a study committee or looked at some type of a purpose in which that they're going to be used for.
Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Biederman, for what purpose?
The gentleman yield for a question.
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
I'll be glad to yield, Mr.
The gentleman
Chairman.
yields.
Thank you. Talking about background checks and so forth and that information, we've had a number of bills over the last few sessions with similar concerns about that information being leaked out or let out where it shouldn't be. Isn't that correct?
I do, and that's one of the reasons I'm up here. I want to make sure that's not done again, and with the information we've got here, and so I don't think it's been covered enough, Mr. Biederman.
Well, you know, when we talked about these bills last session and session before, it came up with the same type of not only just concerns, but a lot more discussion. So I'm surprised that we don't have as much discussion about it on this bill. And again, when it's on local and consent like this, it's really not a local bill, wouldn't you say?
I would agree.
Yep.
Agree with you on that. Yes, sir. I think that you know, it sounds good, and you know, basically, but I think we've got the problem of, is this list going to be sold, or somebody else is going to do something with it? And from what I can tell in the bill, but I don't know, you know, I may be wrong, but I can't see where enough's been done to protect the people on this floor and their constituents. Thank you, Mr. Biederman. Go ahead.
Well, you're welcome. And also, on a bill this size, bringing it to local consent, it seems like it should be debated on the floor, not necessarily just run through real quickly on local and consent.
Right. I think that this bill is not a bill that needs to be on local calendars, and I think it needs to be out on the floor and be sent to regular calendars, which is what this will do. If it doesn't stay on this, it'll automatically go to general calendars where people can have the time, and if they put forth the efforts to debate the pros and cons of not only this bill, but this concept.
Well, you know, I own a business, and before I hire anybody, I do my own research. And so having it being mandated is something that's seems to be overburdensome. And you know, again, the employers and these other facilities are able to do their own type of checks on people.
Right. Well, I think, Mr. Biederman, when you get this point in the session and you have bills on a local calendar, I think they really need to be screened very carefully, because obviously, as we do this in the session, all of us, no matter who we are, want your bills moved. You've only got a few days left. You've got to have a bill on the general calendar and passed by the 13th, the House bill. And so that tells you where we are in that manner. And the local consent is the way to get a bill through the process very easily. And you really don't get much debate on it. And I know the local consent calendar does the best they can as far as being able to look at the bills and screen them, and the chairman of that, they do a good job, but there's just so many bills being shoved to local calendars, it's tough to see. And they're just like regular calendars, which I'm on. We don't really have the time, because the bills come late in the session and they've got a time limit. We've got to work on those the best we can. So I think you're right in that respect.
Well, and I think, especially if we're concerned, or the facilities are concerned about their patients, that they would certainly want to have this done themselves without having to have a law to force them to do it.
I think that's correct. You know, I've had a lot of constituents, I'm sure you have, that have questions about, you know, their family and their loved ones that are in these homes and facilities, and they're concerned about what's going on to them. Most of those people cannot adequately, obviously, take care of themselves. And so I don't think they need to be harassed by things like this. I just think it's something we really need to think at, and we need to debate it. You know, during the COVID period, we still have a little of that, but during the COVID period, you know, the nursing homes that you couldn't go in and see your loved ones, and they didn't allow people to go in there, and those people were having a hard time in there, which I understand and appreciate, and I'm sure you did the same thing I did, which was ask the governor to open the nursing home back up, so whether it be you or I or someone else, we could go visit those people and see them. A lot of them, maybe some of them, that's the only ones they could really recognize.
Sure.
Were us.
And also, we're doing a lot of criminal reform, criminal justice reform here on the floor. It seems like we're going to be putting a lot more burden on someone that may have had a minor felony or a minor situation, and yet now they probably will not be able to get a job. So it goes both ways on this bill.
It does go both ways, and I think that everyone on the floor in here wants to do what's best for the people in these facilities and for the loved ones they have that may end up in these facilities. And I know that's how you feel, and you care about it, as do I. Mm-hmm. And it's not, we're against checking the background of these people that work at the facilities, but I think it's how are we going to protect that when we get that information, it doesn't go awry.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, we want to give as much chance as possible for those that have been wanting to get back into society, want to be able to get a job, and we don't want to put too many hindrances on that.
Right. The jobs are important, and it's hard to find a lot of areas in this state. It's hard to find people that are willing to take those type jobs, are qualified for them. And so when you're talking about background checks, you've got to be careful on what they're doing and how they're going to affect the people that are staying there, because that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, we already are doing this, and these facilities are already doing this because they care about their patients, they care about the families that have their people there. And so just adding an extra layer, there's got to be more cost to this also.
I think it does. And who pays that cost? Mm-hmm. The people that are in there pay that cost, or the people that are going to be taken into one of these facilities in the future, and the costs just continue to rise. Mm-hmm. And so there's more than one problem with this. And I just don't think this has been vetted enough to help take care of the situation.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, again, I've hired a number of people, and I did background checks. I found out what their history was from law enforcement and so forth. And on my application, it actually states, do you have a record? So that information is already on the forms, and so when I'm hiring, it's not hard to find this information if you really need it. But I also have hired a lot of people that did have a record because we want to try to help them out.
Right. Mr. Speaker, could we have a little bit of order? I can't hear it. Mr. Biederman, would you mind repeating some of that, because I couldn't.
Members' debate has exceeded 10 minutes and the bill is contested pursuant to Rule 6, Section 24. The bill is returned to the Committee on Local and Consent Calendars.